Sadgurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so this is one of the verses for today. Can you see it? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah, yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right. So, beautiful verse. Sri Dhamma Nama Gopalo Rama Keshavayo Saka Subhala Stota Krishnadya Gopa Prem Nedham Abruvan. And translation is, once some of the cowherd boys, Sri Dhamma, the very close friend of Rama and Krishna, along with Subala, Stoka Krishna, and others, lovingly spoke the following words. Purport. The word premna, with love, indicates that the request the cowherd boys are about to place before Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram is motivated by love, not personal desire. The cowherd boys were eager for Krishna and Balaram to exhibit their pastimes of killing demons and to enjoy the delicious fruits of the Tala forest, and therefore they made the following request. So here's the request. The cowherd boys said, "O Rama, Rama, mighty armed one, O Krishna, destroyer of the miscreants. Not far from here is a very great forest filled with rows of palm trees." The purport is, as stated in the Sri Varaha Purana, Asti Govardhanam Nama Kshetram Parama Durlabam Mathura Paschime Bhage Adurrad Yojana Tvayam. Not far from the western side of Mathura, at a distance of 2 yojanas, 16 miles, is the holy place named Govardhana, which is most difficult to attain. It is also stated in the Braha Prana, Asti Tala Vanam Nama Dena Ka Sura Rakshitam Mathura Paschame Bhage Adurad Eka Yojanam. Not far from the western side of Mathura, 1 yojana away, 8 miles, is a forest known as Talavan, which was guarded by Dhenukasura. Thus, it appears that the Talavan forest is located midway between Mathura and Govardhan Hill. The forest of Talavan is described in the Sri Harivamsa as follows: Satu Desha Sama Snigdha Sumahan Krishna Mritika Dharba Praya Stuli Bhuto Loshtra Pasana Varjita. The land there is even, smooth, and very expansive. The earth is black, densely covered with dharba grass and devoid of stones and pebbles. Anyone who's walked around Vrindavan or Govardhan knows that it would be a great benediction if there's no stones and pebbles if you're walking barefoot. So at least in that time, there was no stones and pebbles, which would have made walking barefoot parikrama much easier. And finally, the last verse I was asked to speak on or to cover today. In that Talavan forest, many fruits are falling from the trees, and many are already lying on the ground, but all the fruits are being guarded by the evil Dhenuka. Purport. The demon Dhenuka would not allow anyone to eat the delicious ripe palm fruits of the Talavan, and Krishna's young boyfriends protested this unjust usurpation of the right to enjoy the fruits of a public forest. Very nice. Okay. So I just wanted to highlight 2 things here before I stop sharing this part. So Dhenuka did not allow anyone to eat the delicious ripe fruits. And 2 verses before, in 20, here it says that the word premna with love indicates that the request the cowherd boys are about to place before Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram was motivated by love, not personal desire. So I was, let me just, there we go. I was spotlighted, so I was just seeing myself, which is like, not the greatest thing to do when you're giving class. So I was talking to my good friend Bindu Madhava Prabhu the other day, and we were talking about this class today, and he was saying he was glorifying Champakalata Devi's class the other day. And then he was joking with me how classes in ISKCON or amongst devotees these days are about love of Krishna and how wonderful Krishna is. And we were joking about how in the 70s, the classes were all about birth, death, disease, and old age. There's no enjoyment in this material world. It sucks. This material world is just the stinking, rotten karmis and all that. So I promised him I would give a little bit of a stinking, rotten karmi class, along with another part of the class about Govardhan. So there's two parts to this discussion today. One is about these 2 points about no personal desire, no material desire in verse 20, and the envious mood of Dhanuka, and about envy in verse 22. And then in 21, Govardhan is mentioned. So we want to find some time to glorify and talk about Govardhan. So let us, so no material desire, and this mood of envy, that they go actually together. We are told Anyabilasita Sunyam Jnana Karma Anavritam, that pure bhakti, the definition of pure bhakti is anya means other, abhilas means desire, and sunya means zero. No material desires and what are those? Jnana Karma Anavritam. Desires for sense gratification, for being a stinking rotten karma. Gyan, this demoniac, impersonal, of course, Krishna has an impersonal energy, but the impersonal philosophy that denies Krishna of his personality is literally demoniac. And then Adi, Jnana Karma Adi means etc., which especially means yogic powers, because we can get, we're not very tuned into yogic powers right now in this part of Kali Yuga, but previously it can be such a distraction from bhakti, when you can control people's minds, and you can, I always wish when I used to do book distribution, I wish I had Prapti City where you could, take the Lakshmi out of people's wallets and then give them a book, But anyway, or become smaller than the smallest or larger than, they're just, and the whole, that verse says anavritam, which means to cover. And so our bhakti should not be covered by personal desires for sense gratification, by any lingering impersonalism that we may still have in our heart. I remember reading in Satchidananda Swami's book, The Living Name, where he said that one of the greatest realizations he had in Krishna consciousness when he realized the holy name is a him and not an it. So that lingering impersonalism that we may have, and pretty much anything else, and those things, they shouldn't cover our bhakti. And so the desires for sense gratification and envy, they're very deep in our heart. I was thinking, I know I wouldn't have given a class like this in the 70s, but because I wouldn't use the references, but I was remembering that song by, Sammy Davis Jr. sang it a lot. It goes, if they could see me now, that little gang of mine, I'm eating fancy chow and drinking fancy wine. Now, of course, about the wine, but his whole point was, the whole point of the song is about envy, that now I'm successful and I want everyone to see my success. I remember talking to one of our congregation members here in DC. He's from Punjab. So you're allowed to make, by the way, you're allowed to make fun of your own people. That's the rule, right? So he's a builder. He's very successful builder, and he builds subdivisions. So he's telling me this story that he was building one of the first houses in that subdivision. It was an Indian couple, and they said, okay, well, this is very nice and everything, but what if other people build smaller houses than us, and that would bring down the value of our house? And this devotee, he said, no, don't worry about it. He said, they're all Punjabis. They're all going to want to build a bigger house than the previous house. So, but that's the nature of this world. Another quote about Rumi says that beg of God the removal of envy, that God may deliver you from externals and bestow upon you an inward occupation, which will absorb you so that your attention is not drawn away. And one more quote about envy is from Gretchen Rubin, she's quite a well-known author these days, writes about things like habits. She has this great book, Better Than Before. Negative emotions like loneliness, envy, and guilt have an important role to play in a happy life. They're big, flashing signs that something needs to change. So for us, we have to learn to catch ourselves when there's this little tweak of envy or desire for pratishta, for fame. And it doesn't have to be like some big fame. It can be the smallest thing. Someone sees that I'm chanting my japa attentively, or for myself, I have to catch myself when I'm giving class. Am I actually giving class to say things that will help devotees, that will be a service, or am I actually want to say things that are cute and smart, so people think, oh, Vraj is such a smart, that guy's, he's with it, right? So it can come in so many different ways. It can be even, in other words, it's very gross sometimes in the outside world, where, keeping up with the Joneses or the Agarwals or whatever, right? You have your next door neighbor has a Tesla, so you have to get a Maserati to, one up them like that. And so it can be quite gross, but it can also be a little more subtle in the association of devotees. This desire for, or this, not this, the desires, this impurities that enter our consciousness. And the sadhaka, or what we want to train one of the practices of bhakti is to catch ourselves when those things come about, almost even laugh at them and just like later, but just don't. I find the easiest thing for me is just try not to take them serious. Like, there the mind goes again. What else is new? Udared atmanam natmanam avasadyat atmaiva hi atmano bandhur atmaiva viparatmanaha. That the mind can be our bandhu, our friend, our vipa, our enemy. And when it's acting in these crazy ways of, one-upmanship, we just gotta, there it goes again, and just, let it go. And that is one of the practices for a sadhaka, is to anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam, to accept things that are favorable for bhakti and to reject things that are unfavorable. I remember hearing a class years ago, I think it was a devotee from Hawaii, so he knew about surfing, and he said, when your mind is thinking about something favorable for bhakti, ride that wave as long as you can, right? And when the mind is thinking about something unfavorable, cut it out as quickly as you can, with a little like brisk hut. I remember in Vrindavan, there's so many stray dogs, and sometimes they bark at you, and they really can be like, they can look a little ferocious, and the only thing you have to do is just go hut, and then they go away. They whimper away. And similarly, we can do that with our mind, just a hut when it's thinking about things that are unfavorable, especially the, what is that in the 16th chapter, lust, anger, and greed. And when we're thinking about Krishna, just think about, ride that wave as long as we can. So that was a little talk about envy and material desires. And before we switch over to Govardhan Hill, what questions, comments, thoughts do you have about envy or material desires? Now that I know that wasn't very fire and brimstone. It's about as good as I can conjure up after. It's been a long time since the 70s. But if you were to have heard my classes in the 70s, you're like, whoa.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I wrote something in the chat, but I'm kind of.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry, Hugo.
Oh no, but since you happened to invite, I figured I'd say something. But I'm appreciating that you're not saying that we should destroy envy and jealousy. I would say maybe once we're at a high level of advancement, we really progress in spiritual life, those things maybe we can dissipate them completely. But what you're saying is like they'll come, but we can just catch them, not take them too seriously, let them pass, just deal with it and then move on with our lives. And I really appreciate that. I think especially for new devotees, there will be like this, it's easy to be self-deprecating, like, oh my gosh, I still have lust, I still have envy, I still have greed, these kinds of things. It's like, well, yeah, are you surprised?
It's
you
like,
can
what else is there?
but so I'm appreciating that point of just catching these things and then working with them, not being in a rush to see them completely destroyed, which is a much tougher thing to accomplish. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Hugo. Jamuna Jaya Ji.
Hare Krishna. Good morning. Thank you for class. I was just remembering something I really resonates me about envy. I forget who said it. Said that, what is envy but misplaced appreciation? And I love that so much, because then it's the opposite. What you appreciate appreciates. So the actual emphasis is, oh wow, look at that. But then we flip it around to make it about not me. So I've always loved that that way of looking at envy.
How nice. It's funny you should say it, because I had another quote. Oh, yeah, here it is. Envy is the art of counting the other fellow's blessings instead of your own.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Thank you. Bimaji.
Haribo Prabhu, wonderful topic in class. I just wanted to say that, that thing of catching ourselves, it can be quite a complicated affair in and unless we, what's the verse where Krishna the Paramatma sitting in a tree, two birds on the branch. What's that verse? Right. Do you know that?
Well, it's mentioned in the Upanishads and also, but go ahead. I think we know what you mean.
Okay. Right. Well, I just wanted to make sure I was backed up here. That Krishna's right there. And as a person who spent 10 years on Sankirtan and was sort of always on the run, so to speak, and always on the edge, we learned to listen to that still small voice within that, like you said, if we are up to no good, or if our mind is up to no good, that we'll hear that little hut, you'll hear Krishna saying, that isn't the way. You'll hear that little Jiminy cricket on your shoulder, or the little angel on your shoulder saying that Krishna always, especially a Krishna conscious person who is chanting rounds, Krishna always whispers in your ear to tell you, hey, that isn't right. And it's our choice at that moment. It's not like these things come upon us, overwhelm us like a flooded basement. We're always given a chance to turn the tap off to envy, to greed, to lust, to anger. We're always given, and whether we listen to it in that moment, whether we listen to that still small voice within. So we always have a chance, and that's the constant prayer is constant listening. So that's just my 2 cents in it. Hare Krishna.
It's called in one place, Hridaya Durbalyam, the weakness of heart. So it's what happens is when that voice is there, Krishna's giving you we all know that, like, that little tap on the shoulder. No, 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 no. But sometimes we don't do the hut, and that's in the second chapter. It's called Hridaya Durbalyam, weakness of heart, that we just don't have the oomph to say no. And of course, the easiest and the beauty of bhakti is the easiest way to say no is to say yes to Krishna, and that's why bhakti is so much more. Thank you, by the way, Krishna Daya Prabhu put in the Upanishad quote. That's the speciality, as we used to say, of bhakti. When we were just talking the other day about renunciation, and our renunciation is so different than everybody else's renunciation of devotees, because it's natural. It's anashaktasya visha nyartaham upayanja nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. You see the connection of everything to Krishna, and so you don't use the world for your enjoyment, but use the world like anything for Krishna's enjoyment, and then you're renounced, instead of just no. And so our real thing is yes, 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 by chanting Krishna's name. Param vijayate. All success, all glory comes from, including Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the cleansing of the heart. So yeah, but I think we all know that, right? We hear that little voice. No, don't do that. Don't say that. Don't go there. And yeah, well, it's not so bad. That joke, right? How do you spell rationalize? And RATIONAL-LIES, right? Our mind can come up with so many rational lies that we think, no, it's okay. I'll be more serious tomorrow, or I won't do this tomorrow, or whatever. Mind is very expert at those kind of things. So thank you for that, Bhima Prabhu. Was there anything else in the chat?
Yes.
So let's go on then to the second part of this class, is about Govardhan Hill.
I'd like to just say something here.
What's that?
Yes, hi. First of all,
sorry, I didn't see your hand. Yeah, go ahead, Prabhu.
A great class, but I was wondering with envy is a very slippery slope. Like when I see sometimes in the movement, different temples saying that they have the truth path as opposed to another temple. When people start saying, I want to ban this book, or I don't want this person speaking. I know they claim they're doing it for Krishna, but I always wonder if there's a certain amount of ego and envy involved.
Yeah, well, we have to be careful. We have to, all of us individually and collectively have to look at our motivations and ensure that they're pure. Yes, thank you.
Vraj Vihari Prabhu, do we look at our motivations or other people's motivations?
I only look at other people's. That's my problem. And then I speculate about it. You see, that's the other thing. Actually, okay, so this is such a big thing, and it kind of connects with what that Prabhuji just said. The greatest detriment to our devotion, our bhakti, is offending devotees. And often offenses come about when we make assumptions about their motivations. And therefore there's so many, for example, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's so many instructions about this, that even if you see Lord Nityananda going into a liquor store, you make the assumption that he's going there to spread Krishna consciousness, not to buy Johnny Walker or whatever. So we want to generally, in the association of devotees, assume good intentions. And when our mind goes to a negative attention, think of what is another possible interpretation. And that doesn't mean to be foolish, or what's the word, being taken advantage of by someone. Sometimes we have to be a little, New York street smart. But in general, the tendency in Kali Yuga is when we make assumptions, we go to the negative, and we think we go to the worst interpretation of what a devotee is doing. So we want to be careful about that. And the easy thing to do, by the way, if it's appropriate, is to go up to that devotee and say, you know, when you took all the last 6 gulab jamans, what's going on there, right? Because in our mind, we might think this person's a real glutton. And then we find out, well, actually, I was saving them for the pujaris. They don't get any of the Mahaprasad, whatever, you know, they have actually a really reasonable excuse. And by asking the question, we avoided offending them. So
that's a great point, Prabhu. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah. Well, in my work in conflict resolution, that's my occupation. The number one cause of conflicts in the world is making wrong assumptions about one another. The number 2 cause, and this is good for people who are in management or many actually in family, whatever, is unclear expectations. Right.
Can you elaborate on that, on the unclear expectations?
Well, like in the 70s, you know, we joined the ashram and just thought, first of all, I expected to be in the ashram my whole life. And second of all, I expected ISKCON to take care of me my whole life. Right. And so we didn't have clear expectations in the earlier days about what it means to live in the ashram and what you can expect from the society or from the temple or whatever, that's why it's really good to have premarital counseling, right? So that it's really clear what to expect of each other, how you're going to deal with finances, how are you going to bring up your children, because those can be huge conflicts later on. But if you clarify them up front, it can be really helpful.
Thank you. Haripusha Prabhu, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Haripusha.
Hare Krishna. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We can hear you, but we
hear
can
from
see
our
you.
vision. Oh, now we can see you.
Okay. Wonderful topic. Being careful about being envious. It seems like the root cause would be the scarcity mentality. They talk about the abundance mentality and the scarcity mentality. And if we have a desire for devotional service, there's no shortage. There's plenty of service for everyone. But if we have a desire for something else other than devotional service, then there's a tendency for resources to be limited. And then there's competition. And we just read a wonderful class by Jasoda Dulal yesterday about how we can do things with out of affection for Krishna. And you might be doing devotional service for some other motivation, some religious activity, but without the affection, then it's not pleasing to the Lord. And we can understand that by nature we're loving beings. So it's natural to serve because it's natural to want to serve love. That's as simple as breathing. And the other kind of mentality, the artificial scarcity mentality, or the non-loving, the envious mentality, is actually so unreal and ridiculous that it's easy to step into another way of looking at things. And naturally, if we see somebody doing something inappropriate, we'll feel sorry for them because they're missing out on the nectar.
Thank you. Yeah. And it can even be there in I was going to say in philosophy, philosophically or theologically, some things we definitely know some things are right and wrong, like we spoke earlier about Mayavad, right? But there can also be times when both can be right. For example, in the 11th canto, chapter 22, in the beginning, it's a beautiful passage where Uddhava asks Krishna, well, some scholars say there's 20, you say there's 26 elements, some say there's 28, some say 7, some say 9, some say 13. Which one is it? And Krishna says, no, they can all be right. They're just looking at it from different, I'm paraphrasing, they're looking at it from different points of view. And so sometimes, we get sometimes really caught up, especially about some details. In the 6th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada talks about at the very beginning of the chapter, the difference between principles and details. And principles are unchanging, but details you change according to time, place, and circumstance. And sometimes we can get into this tyranny of or. It's either this or that. instead of, well, what about both? That I think it's Hari Sari Prabhu who tells that story about being as Prabhupada's servant being in his room, and a sannyasi comes in the room, and Prabhupada says, "You're a sannyasi. Do not constantly travel. Don't stay in any place more than 3 days." And the sannyasi says, "Yes, Prabhupada," and he walks out. And then about 20 minutes later, another sannyasi comes in. Prabhupada says, "You're a sannyasi. Stay in this one city and become the temple president. Don't travel." And he leaves. And then Hari said, "Prabhupada, huh? What? Do you think the spiritual master is a dull stone? He can't give one disciple one instruction, another disciple a different instruction according to their nature and according to the needs. So it can also manifest in those ways as well. I did want to spend a few minutes talking about Govardhan. And Adi Pushpru can confirm this, I think. In the earlier days of ISKCON, we didn't know what, we know, okay, Govardhan Puja once a year, Krishna lifted the hill with his left, but we didn't, until like 1987, Vrindavan in general, in a place like Govardhan, really wasn't like a big emphasis in the association of devotees. We didn't talk about it a lot or really understand that much about Govardhan Tattva and the importance and the significance of Govardhan. And Govardhan is so significant in our with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his last days, just before he left Puri to go to Calcutta. He was staying at the part of, what is it? Chatrika Parvat, is that what it's called? The place which is Lord Chaitanya is non-different than Govardhan. And there, every day, he would have one of the songs about Giriraj. I think it was Raghunath Das Goswami's one about begging for residence at Giriraj, recited every day. And then our Prabhupada, right? What was his last desire in this world? Was to do Govardhan Prikrama. Right? It was I think most of us know that pastime, and he wanted to go by bullock cart, and devotees were in so much anxiety because the bullock cart goes over so many bumps, and Prabhupada wouldn't make it physically through Govardhan Prikrama. And so finally he relented and didn't go. But then one addendum to that, I heard Giriraj Maharaj talk about after Prabhupada left this world, they took shortly afterwards, they took a murti of Prabhupada around Govardhan Prikrama. They did go, and they said it was such an incredible experience. Everyone had this incredible experience of feeling Prabhupada, literally present with them. It was an extraordinary experience. He talked about that everyone who went on that Prikrama, and we only have a few minutes left, but Govardhan, Giriraj, Govardhan is there's so much. He, like Lord Chaitanya, he can be worshipped as Krishna and also as a devotee of Krishna, as Giridhari, Krishna who's lifting Govardhan hill and different from the hill, and also as Giriraj, who's what's that verse? The greatest devotee of Krishna. And Giriraj is Govardhan is totally a mystical experience. Anyone who's been there, he's a hill, he's a group of stones, but we feel and we experience the reality that he's a person, and an incredibly merciful person, just like the devotee is so merciful. So Giriraj, when he's in the mood of Hari Dasya Varya, the greatest devotee of Krishna, you feel this blessing. The locals call him Baba, Father, and they just have this amazing reciprocal relationship with Govardhan, and we also should cultivate that. I'm trying to think of what to say in just a few minutes, but I guess I just wanted to focus more on the person Giriraj. I mean, I can go into the details and how in different yugas he was this huge mountains with so many different peaks, and his soil was of different colors, and the gopas, the cowherd boys, would mix it with some water and then paint Krishna with the different colors. and the caves there were so many pastimes. And the grass for the cows, and there's different kinds of grass. And depending on the kind of grass, the fragrance of the milk would come out differently depending on which kind of grass the cow. So there's that level of Giriraj, which is totally mystical. But my point is, we can experience some of that mystical experience in a form of reciprocation of bhakti, in his presence, if we're fortunate enough to be there, if you have a Govardhan Shila, or you know someone who has a Govardhan Shila, and pray to Giriraj, if you spend some time at Govardhan Hill, you just feel this. Even I remember taking some people who aren't practicing bhakti, but they were visiting Vrindavan, and I would take them to Govardhan Hill, and they would just like, wow, there's some special energy here that, they would pick up on that, right? And so I think I have so this is the path, the Prikramarg of Giriraj, and there's the soft sand without the pebbles, but not all of it is necessarily like that. But doing Prikrama of Giriraj is such a blissful experience, and there's so many pastime places. And picture of Giriraj here, and this is taken in one of my favorite parts of Govardhan Hill, near the, Giriraj is sometimes considered like a peacock, and the end of the peacock is the low level. This is just near that part of Giriraj. I think over there is a Nilagai, what they call a blue cow. And there's nothing like having kirtan, having classes at the foot of Giriraj. So merciful. And part of Govardhan Hill is Radhakund. Radhakund and Shamakund are considered like the two eyes of the peacock. And Radhakund, of course, is in the nectar of instruction. We hear about the different levels of sacredness of holy places. And second, it comes in Govardhan, and then first comes Radhakund. I just threw this in there. This is our deities here in Washington, D.C. Radha Madan Mohan, and Madan Mohan is the first deity in ISKCON. Prabhupada, there's a whole story about Brahmananda Prabhu finding him in New York City and bringing him to Prabhupada. The whole story about how he came to Washington, D.C., which we can tell you another time. And then we have created a retreat center. This is, it looks better than the landscaping is done now, but this is the Govardhan Retreat Center that just opened a few months ago. And it's just like a 2-minute walk from Govardhan. And it has a beautiful kirtan stali where devotees have kirtan. There's His Holiness Kadamba Maharaj just leading about a month ago. So there's, like I said, I could go on and on about the glories of Govardhan Hill. And its significance for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and its significance for Prabhupada Nugas, because literally the last desire Prabhupada had was to do Prikrama of Govardhan. So we have 4 minutes left. What questions, comments, thoughts about Govardhan Hill, Giriraj? Your experiences? Yes, Krishna Daya Prabhu.
Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhu. Just a small observation, the last photo, Washington, D.C., which you shared, is that on the Gopashtami? Because Radharani...
Yes, that's Gopashtami. Yes. Yeah, you didn't catch it. Oops. Where is it? Here we go. Yeah, that's Gopashtami.
The stick is with Srimati Radharani.
She's carrying the cow. Yes. Yeah. Other questions, thoughts, comments about Giriraj? My point is, it's not just another holy place. It's very, very, Giriraj, he is very, very important to us as as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Yes, Adi Pushpu.
Radhanath Swami brought a Govardhan Shila to New Vrindavan. He told us he had to get permission from a local Babaji to take. And when he was going through customs, he had the Shila in a box. And the customs official said, "What's in this box?" And Radhanath Swami opened the box and said, "This is God. Bow down." And the guy was like, okay, close the box.
That'll do it. Yes. Giriraj is the original rock star. Sorry about that, but that's one of the jokes.
Tremendous clarity and, deep faith and seriousness, like probably nobody else on the planet can exhibit. He said to the guy, "This is God." And the guy said, okay, close the box. They closed the box. They let through custom. But, Govardhan gave them mercy.
Yeah.
Darshan.
Yes. Thank you. Other thoughts about Giriraj? Govardhan?
I would just like to very quickly say before the conch shell rings blows that when I first joined the movement and learned about Govardhan and the lifting, I noticed in the paintings, because of course that was my access to it, in a painting is worth 1,000 words, so to speak, that Krishna was at the center of the hill, and that all were allowed to see Krishna at once. Yes. That all the other pastimes were the cowherd boys or the gopis or Mother Yashoda or the demons or whatever. And here it was that everyone circled around Krishna as in spokes in a wheel. And Krishna was the cynosure of attention for 7 days. And it was sort of, I remember being quoted this Sarva Dhamma, have no fear, I will give you shelter, I will protect you. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, Krishna, this is how he protects. He if he's the center of your attention, then you can guarantee yourself that he's going to put an umbrella of shelter over you. So that's what I'd like to say. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And we'll just end it then with a little Rasika part that, the gopis, they generally could only look at Krishna with like sidelong glances and things. They didn't want to get caught by staring at Krishna, especially the married gopis. But in the Govardhan Leela, they could because he was there, and they could just look at him without blinking their eyes, and didn't have to worry about it. So that pastime, and also the Kaliya Leela, similarly, they could just gaze at Krishna without any inhibition. So those two Leelas, it's like that. So thank you so much. I always relish the opportunity to give devotees in the Bhakti Center. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Cameras on, please. And if you can. Okay. This is why we have devotees like Vraj Vihari Prabhu give class. Okay, we hope you liked it. We hope you got uplifted by today's class. If you'd like to reflect, now is the time. All right. So with that, we'd like to wish you a blessed day. Krishna is lifting the Govardhan right above us. We just have to come under and stay there. All right. William Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Sundar Nandaji, Bruce Prabhu, Immortal Kishori, Devi Dasi, Yogeshwari, Suzanne, Preeti Chaturvedi, Pink Yogi Harlem, Sharmila, Bhima Prabhu, Dana Krishna's Radharani, Angel. We love you all. Thank you for being part of this community. Hare Krishna.